So my favorite memory of Fred is his 40th birthday. We invited 4 other couples to go with us to Healdsburg, and we took over a big bed and breakfast up there. It had a pool and a tennis court. And before we left, I had t-shirts made that said, "I'm Fred's friend," and everybody wore a t-shirt that said, "I'm Fred's friend," and I had one made for him that said, "I'm Fred." So when we got up there, we went on a big bike ride to a winery, and when we got to the winery, all these people came up to us and said, "Hey, who's this Fred guy?" And Fred pointed to his t-shirt and went, "I'm Fred." And he got a lot of attention, and he had a really good time. It was a great trip.
Okay, so my funniest or some best memories with Dad are the time that we went to the Golden Gate Bridge 50th anniversary and rode our bikes across it. Another memory is driving up to Tahoe to go skiing and listening to the Beatles in the truck. And another great memory is when we won the middle school basketball game and Dad was the star coach.
My favorite memory is probably just a bunch of memories that Fred has this way of telling stories that you'll always remember. I remember him telling me a story about his grandfather when his grandfather was a street preacher in San Francisco and was murdered by a Filipino street gang. And this was a story that even Hillary didn't know. Stories about him riding motorcycles through the redwoods. And stories that, it's just surprising how many experiences Fred has had and how interesting they are, and they'll stick with you.
My favorite memory of Dad would probably be growing up playing guitar together when I was in high school in our soundproof room, jamming away, and just having tons of fun together.
My favorite memory of Fred, I actually have 2. The first one was in Salt Lake City when we had Christmas and we got to just lounge around on the couches and talk, and we talked about everything from sports to business to family, and I always just love sitting down with Fred and picking his brain on everything. I really respect him as a man and head of a household. My second memory that I would also count as my favorite is when we went to Top Golf in Scottsdale, and we sat there swinging the golf club, and at the end of it, Fred gave me just this tiny tip on my golf swing, and I immediately started hitting the ball solid, far, and accurate, and that was just a fun little tip that I got from him, and it was really cool to see the immediate results from it. So those are my favorite memories.
My favorite memory of Grandpa is when he sings "Wheels on the Bus."
So the biggest lessons that I've learned from Dad, there are definitely a lot, so I narrowed it down to 3. The first one would be to take things day by day. The second one is to save your money. And the third is to do it right the first time.
I think one of the most important things I've learned from Fred is to always dream big. That if you don't take risks and you don't make sacrifices, you'll never get ahead in life. And he's always been one to bite off more than he can chew and stick with it. And he's always provided for us, and we've always had a nice life.
The most important lesson I learned from Fred was when we sat down for coffee and I asked him if I could marry his daughter. And we sat there for about a half hour, and he gave me so much great information on just how to be a good husband, a good head of the household, good with money, good in a relationship, how to stay best friends with your significant other, and how to provide. And those were all, great lessons that I learned from him. And just those 30 minutes I will remember for the rest of my life.
So one of the most important lessons that I've learned from Dad is comes from his famous song, Day by Day, and that is to take life day by day, and that will help you get through hard times. So I love that lesson. And another important lesson I've learned from Dad is how to be financially responsible, and I appreciate that and how it's made me a financially responsible adult.
So one lesson I think Fred has really taught me is I was talking to him about work and about how his business has grown and over the years and the ups and downs, and kind of how my career has come into being. And he, kind of stopped me and as I was talking about what I could do with my career, what I could do for work, and said, Mikey, you really have to ask yourself what you want. And this may be a kind of simple thing, like, of course you should ask yourself what you want, but I think I haven't really asked myself that enough. I think I've asked myself for the short term, what do I want? I want a job, I want to pay the bills. But to actually sit back and ask yourself what you want is kind of something I think everybody needs to take a step back and ask themselves again. So thank you, Fred, for bringing that up and making me think about what I actually want.
The most important thing I've learned from Grandpa is my numbers and my ABCs, even though I haven't said them yet to him.
So the 3 words that came to mind when I would describe my dad would be number 1, funny, because he is very funny. And number 2 is giving or generous, because he is the most giving and generous person that I know, and is always willing to help out no matter what the issue is. And number 3 is sensitive in a good way, just very feels deeply and strongly, and I love that about him.
3 words to describe Fred. I would say Fred, just kidding. I would say that he is friendly, he's an amazing storyteller, and he's very generous.
3 words I'd use to describe Fred. First off, I'd say patriarch. He is the leader of the family and the household, and I've always respected that about him, about the pride he takes in providing for his family, for his wife, and for his daughters. I've always loved that about Fred. Next, I'd say he's wise. He seems to have done so much research in so many different categories, whether it be business or finances or sports. It seems like he takes the time to learn something and retain it, and I love that about him. And the last thing I would say, the last word I would use to describe Fred is mentor. Fred, whether you know it or not, I really try to take in the information that you give me on all sorts of different subjects. I really look up to you and respect you as a man. And whether you know it or not, I try to retain a lot of information that you put out there while we're together. So I learn a lot from you, and I respect the heck out of you. and what you do for your family, and your wife and your daughters.
I think the 3 words that best describe Fred are loyal, honest, and hardworking.
So 3 words that I would use to describe Dad. There's obviously a lot more than 3 that I can list out, but the main ones would be 1, dependable, 2 would be advisor and mentor, and then 3 would be hardworking.
3 words that describe my grandpa are funny, tall and big, and the best grandpa in the world.